The year was 2157 and humanity had spread beyond Earth. People lived on Mars and Europa now. The red dust of Mars was home to 50,000 souls who worked and dreamed under its pink sky. They had built domes and underground cities. They grew food in special soil and mined the rocks for valuable metals. The largest settlement was New Seattle, where 40,000 people lived their lives, far from the planet that had given birth to mankind. Captain Diane Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, Earth's first faster-than-light ship. Her dark hair was cut short, and her blue uniform was crisp and clean. She looked at the stars on the big screen in front of her. They were at the edge of the solar system, farther than any human had gone before. "Status report," she said, her voice calm and steady. Lieutenant Sam Howard sat at his console, his fingers moving over the controls. He was young, only 30, with red hair and a serious face. "All systems normal, Captain. We are ready to make our first jump beyond the solar system." Dr. Alan Grant nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. He was the ship's xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. At 55, he had waited his whole life for this moment. "Just think, Captain. We might be the first humans to meet another intelligent species." Captain Miller smiled. "Let's hope they're friendly, Doctor." The bridge was quiet as the crew worked. The Vanguard was a beautiful ship, the pride of Earth's fleet. It had taken 20 years to build and could travel faster than light. It was a miracle of science and engineering. "Captain," Lieutenant Howard said suddenly, his voice tense. "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors." Miller walked to his station. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Multiple objects, moving at high speed. They're coming from outside the solar system." Dr. Grant stood up, his face showing both fear and hope. "Alien vessels?" "It appears so," Howard said. "They're not responding to our hails." Captain Miller's smile faded. "Battle stations. Power up shields." The alarm sounded throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their posts. The excitement of first contact was now mixed with worry. On the screen, they saw the alien ships appear. They were huge, at least 3 times the size of the Vanguard. They looked like giant metal insects with sharp points and glowing red lights. There were 5 of them. "Try again to communicate," Miller ordered. Howard sent messages in all known formats, but there was no response. "They're changing course," said the navigation officer, Linda Parker. She was 40, with blonde hair and steady hands. "They're heading toward Mars." Miller felt a chill. "Follow them, maximum speed." The Vanguard chased after the alien ships, but they were faster. Miller contacted Earth to warn them of the possible danger. Admiral Jack Peterson responded from Earth Command. "We see them on our deep space radar, Captain. What are their intentions?" "Unknown, sir. They won't respond to communications." Inside the lead alien ship, Commander Krazuthul stood tall, his scaled skin reflecting the red light of the command center. He was a Zorlaxian, a reptilian species that ruled many star systems. His yellow eyes narrowed as he looked at the images of Mars and its human colonies. "These humans advanced too quickly," he said to his officers. "They were using chemical rockets a century ago. Now they have faster-than-light travel. They are a threat to Zorlaxian supremacy." His second-in-command, Subcommander Vex, nodded. "What are your orders, Commander?" Krazuthul's mouth formed what passed for a smile among his kind. "We will give them a lesson they won't forget. Target their largest settlement on the Red Planet." "No warnings, no mercy," Vex hesitated. "Without provocation, the Galactic Council might not approve." "The Galactic Council is not here," Krazuthul said coldly. "And when we're done, these humans will be too afraid to ever complain." On the Vanguard, the crew watched in horror as the alien ships approached. "Mars. They're taking up positions over New Seattle," Howard reported, his voice shaking. Miller grabbed the communication controls. "Attention, alien vessels. This is Captain Diane Miller of the USS Vanguard. Mars is a peaceful colony. Please, state your intentions." There was no answer. Dr. Grant looked at the readings from his science station. "Captain, I'm detecting energy buildups in those ships. They might be weapons." Miller's heart raced. Contact New Seattle. Tell them to activate their emergency protocols. And get me Earth Command again. But it was too late. The alien ships released bright beams of energy that cut through Mars' thin atmosphere. The beams hit the protective dome over New Seattle. The dome shattered like glass. The atmosphere rushed out. Buildings collapsed. People who weren't wearing spacesuits died instantly. Those who were protected had nowhere to run. The Vanguard was still hours away, too far to help. The crew watched the sensor readings in silence, knowing what they meant. New Seattle was being destroyed. "My God," whispered Dr. Grant. "They're killing everyone." The alien ships fired again and again. They targeted power plants, water facilities, and life support systems. In 20 minutes, a thriving colony became a silent graveyard. When they finished, the alien ships turned and moved away from Mars, heading back toward deep space. Captain Miller stood frozen, her face pale. 40,000 people had just died. Men, women, children. Gone. "Captain," Linda said softly, "the alien ships are heading in our direction." Miller made a quick decision. "Prepare to jump to light speed. We need to warn Earth." "But Captain," Howard protested, "we can't just run." "We have no choice," Miller said, her voice hard. "The Vanguard is a research vessel. We have minimal weapons. If we stay and fight, we'll die, and Earth won't know what happened." As the alien ships approached, the Vanguard's engines powered up. Just before the jump to lightspeed, they received a transmission from the lead alien ship. It was a video message. Reptilian face filled the screen. Yellow eyes stared at them without emotion. "Humans," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Commander Krazathul of the Zorlaxian Imperial Force. What you have witnessed is but a taste of our power. Your rapid advancement threatens the established order of the galaxy. Know your place, or next time we will target your homeworld." The transmission ended. Seconds later, the Vanguard jumped to lightspeed, leaving the scene of the massacre behind. In the quiet of faster-than-light travel, Captain Miller gathered her crew. "We've just witnessed an act of war," she said, her voice steady despite her anger and grief. "These Zorlaxians think they've taught us a lesson, that we'll cower in fear." She looked at each crew member in turn. "They don't understand humans. They don't know our history. They don't know what happens when someone attacks us without cause." Dr. Grant nodded slowly. "They expect us to surrender." "Yes," Miller said. "But they're going to learn something about humanity. We don't surrender. We fight back, and we win." The Vanguard raced toward Earth, carrying news that would forever change human history. Humanity's first contact with alien life had ended in tragedy, but it would not end in defeat. The USS Vanguard arrived at Earth 3 days after the attack on Mars. As soon as they entered Earth's orbit, Captain Diane Miller was ordered to bring her ship to the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. The news of the attack had reached Earth before them. The whole planet was in shock and mourning. 40,000 lives lost in less than an hour. It was the worst disaster in human history since the climate wars of the 2080s. Miller stepped into the large circular room where the Earth Council met. 50 leaders from all major regions sat around a huge table. Their faces were grim. At the head of the table sat President Laura Wilson, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much in her 60 years of life. "Captain Miller," President Wilson said, "please tell the Council exactly what happened." Miller stood straight as she described the encounter with the Zorlaxian ships and the brutal attack on New Seattle. When she finished, she played the recording of Commander Krazathul's threat. The room was silent for a long moment after the alien's cold voice faded away. Then everyone started talking at once. "We should surrender," said one council member, his voice shaking. "You saw what they did to Mars. Imagine what they could do to Earth." "No, we should try to talk to them," said another. "There must have been some misunderstanding." A third pounded his fist on the table. "We should hide, shut down all our space operations and hope they forget about us." President Wilson raised her hand and the room grew quiet again. "Admiral Peterson, your thoughts?" Admiral Jack Peterson stood up. He was a big man with dark skin and a calm voice that had led Earth's defense forces for 15 years. Madam President, members of the Council, I've studied the sensor data from the Vanguard. The Zorlaxians have advanced technology, yes. But they're not gods. They can be fought. With what? Someone asked. Their ships are 3 times the size of our best vessels. Peterson smiled slightly. Size isn't everything. The Zorlaxians rely on large warships and direct attacks. That's their way. But it doesn't have to be ours. He walked to the center of the room and activated a holographic display. They expect us to either surrender or to fight like they do. But humanity has always been good at adapting, at finding new ways to solve problems. Miller watched as Peterson outlined his plan. It was bold, maybe crazy, but she found herself nodding as he spoke. They think they know what humans are capable of, Peterson told the stunned council. They have no idea. While the council debated, Dr. Nancy Rivera was working in her lab at the North American Science Center in what used to be Old Chicago. She was a physicist who specialized in shield technology. Earth Command had sent her all the sensor data from the attack. Play it again, she told her computer as she studied the readings from when the Zorlaxian ships fired on Mars. The computer showed the energy patterns of the alien weapons and shields. Rivera watched carefully, looking for something she might have missed. Then she saw it. Pause. Zoom in on the shield harmonics during the 3rd attack run. The computer did as she asked. Rivera leaned forward, her brown eyes wide with excitement. The shield shift frequency in a regular pattern, she muttered to herself. It's subtle, but it's there. She ran some calculations, her fingers flying over her keyboard. If she was right, the Zorlaxian shields had a weakness. At certain moments, they adjusted their frequency. During those milliseconds of adjustment, they were vulnerable. Rivera grabbed her phone and called Earth Command. Back in Geneva, the Council voted to approve Admiral Peterson's plan. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Earth would not surrender. It would fight back, but not in the way the Zorlaxians expected. President Wilson addressed the planet that evening. Her face was on screens in homes across Earth and the remaining colonies. Today, we mourn our brothers and sisters who died on Mars, she said. Tomorrow we begin our response. I will not tell you this will be easy. I will not promise that there won't be more losses, but I promise you this. Humanity will not bow to threats. We will not surrender our freedom or our future to anyone, human or alien. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. While the public was told to carry on with their lives, behind the scenes, Earth's military and scientific communities worked day and night to prepare. Standard warships were converted into drone carriers. Thousands of small unmanned fighters were built in factories around the world. And in secret labs, scientists worked with Dr. Rivera's discovery about the Zorlaxian shields. Meanwhile, the Zorlaxians had positioned their fleet near Jupiter, waiting for Earth's response. Commander Krazathul was confident. His people had conquered dozens of alien races. Humans would be no different. They will either send their ships to fight us, which will end in their destruction, he told his officers, or they will surrender, which is the wiser choice. Sub-Commander Vex wasn't so sure. The humans seem different from other species we have encountered. They advanced from primitive technology to space travel very quickly. Krazathul dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. Quick learners, perhaps, but still primitive. Their ships are small and weak. Their weapons are basic. They have no experience with interstellar war. On Earth, General Frank Rodriguez stood in the control center of the North American Space Command. He was overseeing the final preparations for Operation Trojan Horse. Are the decoy ships ready? He asked his staff. Yes, sir, replied Colonel Wendy Baker. 10 vessels, heavily armored but minimally crewed. They look like our strongest warships from the outside. And the real strike force? 4,000 stealth for. Drones equipped with Dr. Rivera's shield disruptors. They're hidden in the rings of Saturn waiting for the signal. Rodriguez nodded. And the fighter squadrons? Hidden on the moons of Jupiter, as ordered. The Zorlaxians haven't detected them. Good. Rodriguez looked at the large map of the solar system on the main screen. Red dots showed the position of the Zorlaxian fleet. Blue dots showed Earth's forces. The plan was risky, but it was their best chance. A message came in from Earth Command. The decoy fleet was to launch in 6 hours. Lieutenant Scott Williams sat in the cockpit of his ship, one of the 10 decoys that would soon head toward Jupiter and the waiting Zorlaxian fleet. He knew the mission was dangerous. The decoys had to look like they were making a serious attack, which meant getting close to the enemy. "Ready?" asked his co-pilot, Lieutenant Kate Robinson. Williams nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be to fly into the guns of aliens who destroyed a whole colony. We just need to keep their attention long enough for the drones to do their work," Robinson said. "I know. Doesn't make it any less scary." 6 hours later, the 10 ships lifted off from Earth's moon base. They headed toward Jupiter in a standard attack formation. They were bait, meant to draw the Zorlaxians' attention and fire. And in the shadows of the solar system, thousands of small drones began to move silently toward their targets, carrying humanity's best hope for survival. The 10 human ships moved slowly through space toward Jupiter. From the outside, they looked like powerful warships, armed with the best weapons Earth could make. Inside, they carried only small crews and lots of equipment to make them seem more important than they really were. Lieutenant Scott Williams looked at his control panel. His ship, the Freedom, was at the front of the formation. The Zorlaxian fleet was just ahead, near the largest moon of Jupiter. "They see us," said Lieutenant Kate Robinson, checking her sensors. "They're moving to intercept." Williams nodded. "Just as we planned. Let's give them a good show." On the main Zorlaxian ship, Commander Krazathul watched the approaching human vessels with amusement. Only 10 ships? The humans were either brave or stupid. "They send only 10 ships against our fleet of 30? He said to Sub-Commander Vex. "Perhaps they wish to die quickly." Vex studied the sensor readings more carefully. The ships appeared to be their most advanced models. Heavy armor, multiple weapon systems. "It doesn't matter," Krazathul said. "They are still primitive compared to us. Prepare all weapons. Let us end this quickly." The Zorlaxian ships moved into attack formation, their weapons powered up, ready to destroy the human fleet in minutes. But far from this visible confrontation, the real battle plan was unfolding. Chief Engineer Olivia Martinez sat in the control room on Earth, monitoring the progress of the stealth drones. These small devices were her creation. They were nearly invisible to sensors and carried special equipment designed by Dr. Rivera to attack the Zorlaxian shields. "Drone Group 1 is in position," she reported to General Rodriguez. "Group 2 will be ready in 5 minutes." Rodriguez nodded. "Perfect timing. The decoy fleet is about to engage the enemy." Major Ethan Cole and his Special Forces team were hidden on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. They had arrived weeks earlier, in small, hard-to-detect ships. Now they watched and waited, ready to launch in their fighter craft once the drones did their work. "All teams report ready," said his second-in-command, Captain Lisa Foster. "The Zorlaxians still don't know we're here." Cole looked out at the massive Zorlaxian ships in the distance. "Let's hope it stays that way until it's too late for them." The human decoy fleet was now close enough to the Zorlaxian ships to begin the show. Williams ordered his ships to spread out and begin firing. The shots were designed to look dangerous but would do little actual damage to the Zorlaxian shields. "Pathetic." Commander Krazathul laughed as the human weapons hit his ship's shields. "They cannot even scratch us." He ordered his fleet to return fire. The Zorlaxian weapons were much stronger. 2 human ships were hit badly. Their shields failed, and they began to drift. "See how weak they are?" Krazathul told his crew. "This is why the Zorlaxian Empire rules the stars, and why species like humans will always serve us or die." Williams saw 2 of their ships take heavy damage. He knew the crews would be fine. They were mostly empty and had escape pods, but it still looked bad. "Hold formation," he ordered the remaining ships. "Continue the attack." The Zorlaxians were focused completely on the visible battle. They didn't notice the thousands of tiny objects now surrounding their fleet. The stealth drones had moved into position, hiding in Jupiter's magnetic field and using the planet's radiation to mask their approach. On Earth, Dr. Rivera watched the sensor data coming in. "The drones are all in position," she told Martinez. "We can begin the operation." Martinez nodded and sent the coded signal. All 4,000 drones activated at once. Each drone began to emit a special signal designed to interfere with the Zorlaxian shield frequency. Alone, one drone couldn't do much. But thousands together, all hitting the shields at the exact same moment when the frequency shifted, created a powerful effect. On the Zorlaxian command ship, alarms began to sound. "What is happening?" Krazathul demanded as the lights on his ship flickered. "Shield failure across the fleet," reported a panicked officer. "Communications are being disrupted. Weapon systems are going offline." Vex checked the sensors. "I'm detecting thousands of small objects around our ships. They weren't there before." "Impossible!" Krazathul slammed his fist down. "No one can hide that many vessels from our sensors." But the evidence was right in front of him. Somehow the humans had tricked them. Their shields were failing, their communications were down, and their weapons were not responding. On Europa, Major Cole got the signal he had been waiting for. "The shields are down," he told his teams. "Launch now." From hiding places on Jupiter's moons, hundreds of small, fast fighter ships rose into space. They had been waiting there for days, hidden from the Zorlaxian sensors. Now they streaked toward the disabled alien fleet. Lieutenant Kelly Bradley led the first fighter squadron. Her ship was small but very fast and armed with missiles specially designed to penetrate Zorlaxian hulls. "All fighters engage targets," she ordered. "Remember your training. Hit them hard and fast." The human fighters swarmed around the much larger Zorlaxian ships. Without their shields, the alien vessels were vulnerable. The fighters targeted engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays. From the Freedom, Williams watched in amazement as the real attack unfolded. The Zorlaxian ships that had seemed so mighty minutes ago were now being taken apart by the smaller, faster human vessels. "It's working," Robinson said, her voice filled with wonder. "They really can't fight back." In the Earth control room, General Rodriguez watched the battle through live feeds from the fighters. The plan was working even better than expected. The Zorlaxians were completely surprised and unable to mount an effective defense. "Send in the boarding teams," he ordered. "I want prisoners and their technology." Special forces teams in armored spacesuits launched from the fighters. They attached to the hulls of several Zorlaxian ships and cut their way inside. The alien crews, used to fighting from the safety of their advanced ships, were not prepared for face-to-face combat with human soldiers. On the Zorlaxian command ship, Krazathul was furious. His mighty fleet was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as primitive and weak. "How is this possible?" he raged. "They are nothing. They have only just reached the stars." "Commander," Vex said urgently, "we must retreat. We've lost 15 ships already." Krazathul wanted to argue, but even he could see that the battle was lost. "Prepare for emergency jump. We will return to Zorlaxian space and bring back the main fleet. These humans will pay for this humiliation." As the remaining Zorlaxian ships prepared to flee, a transmission came through on their emergency channel. The face of Captain Diane Miller appeared on the screen. She was on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, which had just arrived at the battle. "Commander." "Krazathul," she said, her voice calm but her eyes hard. "Remember me? You bombed our colony. You killed our people. You thought we would surrender or die fighting." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You bombed us? Adorable. Watch this." Behind her, the Zorlaxian ships exploded one by one as the human fighters continued their attack. Krazathul could only watch in rage and disbelief as his mighty fleet was destroyed by a species he had so badly underestimated. Commander Krazathul watched in horror as his fleet burned. Of the 30 mighty Zorlaxian warships that had entered this system, only his flagship and 2 damaged escort vessels remained. The humans had destroyed everything else. "Emergency jump, now," he shouted to his crew. The 3 remaining Zorlaxian ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the wreckage of their once proud fleet. Lieutenant Kelly Bradley guided her fighter back toward the human command ship. All around her, other fighters were returning from the battle. They had lost some, 12 pilots had died in the attack, but compared to what could have happened, the losses were small. "Victory is confirmed," she reported. "The Zorlaxian fleet is destroyed or retreated." Cheers broke out across the human communications network. What had seemed impossible just days ago had happened. Humanity had defeated a vastly superior alien force. On the USS Vanguard, Captain Diane Miller allowed herself a small smile. "Begin rescue operations," she ordered. "I want all survivors from both sides picked up." "Both sides, Captain?" asked her first officer. "Yes," Miller said firmly. "We're not like them. We don't leave people to die in space, even enemies." The human forces moved quickly to gather the survivors. Most were from the decoy ships that had taken early hits, but there were also Zorlaxians floating in escape pods or clinging to pieces of their destroyed vessels. One of the rescued aliens was brought to the Vanguard. He was injured but alive. Dr. Alan Grant treated his wounds while security officers stood guard. "Why?" the Zorlaxian asked in his rough English. "Why save me?" Miller looked down at the alien. His scales were a dull green now, not the bright color she had seen in Krazthul's message. "Because that's what humans do," she said simply. "We help those in need, even our enemies." The Zorlaxian seemed confused by this. In his culture, showing mercy was a weakness. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. People who had been living in fear now celebrated in the streets. The aliens who had seemed so powerful had been defeated by human ingenuity and courage. Admiral Peterson stood before the Earth Council, giving his report on the battle. "The Zorlaxians underestimated us," he said. "They thought size and power were all that mattered in war. They forgot about strategy, about using your enemy's weaknesses against them." President Wilson nodded. "Will they come back?" "Almost certainly," Peterson said honestly. "We destroyed most of their fleet, but we have to assume they have more ships. They won't take this defeat well." "Then we need to prepare," Wilson said. "Dr. Rivera, what can you tell us about their technology?" Dr. Rivera stepped forward. She had been studying the captured Zorlaxian ships and equipment. "Their technology is advanced but not magical," she said. "We've already learned a lot from the captured vessels. Their faster-than-light drives are similar to ours but more efficient. Their weapons use principles we understand. Given time, we can adapt much of their technology for our own use." Chief Engineer Martinez added, "The stealth drone technology worked better than expected. We can improve it further now that we've seen it in action, and the data from the battle will help us build better shields and weapons." Wilson looked around the room at Earth's best minds and bravest soldiers. "Then we have work to do. The Zorlaxians will be back, and we need to be ready." In the weeks that followed, humans salvaged the Zorlaxian ships and studied their technology. The knowledge they gained advanced Earth science by decades in just months. New ships were built, combining human innovation with adapted alien technology. Captain Miller was given command of the USS Defender, Earth's newest and most powerful ship. It was built using the best of both human and Zorlaxian design. It was smaller than the alien ships but faster and more agile. "She's beautiful," Miller said as she walked through the ship for the first time. Lieutenant Sam Howard, now her first officer, nodded. "And deadly. The Zorlaxians won't know what hit them when they return." Miller wasn't so sure. "They'll be more careful next time. They know what we're capable of now." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Commander Krazthul stood before the Zorlaxian Imperial Council. The large chamber was dark, lit only by red lights that cast long shadows across the scaled faces of the council members. "You lost an entire fleet to primitives?" the High Commander hissed, his voice filled with disgust. Krazthul lowered his head in shame. "They tricked us. They used technology we didn't know they had. They are barely a century into their space age." Another council member said, "How could they defeat our ships?" Krasthul had been asking himself the same question since the disaster. They think differently, he finally said. They don't fight like any species we've encountered before. They used small ships and drones to disable our shields. They hid their real forces and showed us only what they wanted us to see. The High Commander leaned forward. And what do you suggest we do about these humans? We must gather the main fleet, Krasthul said. Send a force so large that no tricks or clever plans could possibly defeat it. We must show the galaxy that no one challenges the Zorlaxian Empire and survives. The Council agreed. Orders went out across the Empire. The main fleet, 500 warships strong, began to assemble. This would be the largest military operation in Zorlaxian history. But as the fleet prepared, something unexpected happened. News of the human victory spread through the Empire. Species that had been conquered and ruled by the Zorlaxians for generations began to whisper about the humans who had done the impossible. On planets far from Earth, slaves looked up at the stars with new hope. If humans could defeat the Zorlaxians, perhaps they were not invincible after all. Sub-Commander Vex noticed the change first. The subject races are becoming restless, he reported to Krasthul. There are reports of small rebellions on 3 outer worlds. Krasthul dismissed the concern. Once we crush the humans, the others will fall back in line. But Vex wasn't so sure. The Zorlaxian Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. Now that fear was being replaced by something else. Hope. As the main Zorlaxian fleet gathered, Earth continued to prepare. New defense systems were placed around Earth and the remaining colonies. The moon was turned into a fortress. Mars, its colony destroyed, became a military base, filled with weapons and ships. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Defender, looking out at the fleet Earth had built in just 3 months. Hundreds of ships, large and small, all equipped, with technology that blended the best of human and Zorlaxian science. They're coming, she said to her crew. And this time, they'll bring everything they have. Howard nodded. But this time, we're ready for them. Miller wasn't afraid. The humans had proven they could stand against the Zorlaxians once. They would do it again, no matter how many ships the aliens brought. The Zorlaxians think they know war, she said. But they've never fought humans before. And they're about to learn that was their biggest mistake. 3 months passed. Earth waited for the Zorlaxian main fleet to arrive. The waiting was hard, but it gave humans time to prepare. Every day, new ships were built. New weapons were tested. New strategies were developed. Captain Diane Miller spent most of her time running drills with the Defender and the other ships in her battle group. The crews trained until they could respond to any situation without thinking. They had to be perfect. The Zorlaxians would not underestimate them again. Tech Specialist Greg Sanders worked with Dr. Rivera to improve the shield disruptor technology. The new version was smaller, more powerful, and could be mounted directly onto fighters and larger ships. The Zorlaxians will have changed their shield frequencies, Sanders said as they tested the new devices. But our systems can now adapt, on the fly. We'll find their new weakness. Admiral Peterson reviewed the battle plans daily. Earth's forces were spread throughout the solar system, hidden where the Zorlaxians wouldn't expect them. The strategy that had worked once would not work again. They needed new tricks. We can't match them for size, he told his officers, but we can outsmart them again. Then, one day, the long-range sensors picked up hundreds of objects moving toward the solar system at faster than light speed. They're here, President Wilson said grimly when she got the news. God help us all. The Zorlaxian main fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 500 warships, each larger and more powerful than those in the first battle. At the front was a massive vessel, twice the size of the others. The High Commander himself had come to oversee the destruction of humanity. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Defender, watching the enemy fleet. On her screens, the crew was silent. The size of the Zorlaxian force was overwhelming. I won't lie to you, Miller told her crew. The odds are bad. But remember what we accomplished last time. Remember New Seattle. Remember why we fight. Across the fleet, other captains gave similar speeches. Humanity stood united against the threat. They had survived the climate wars. They had survived the Great Pandemic. They would survive this too. The Zorlaxian High Commander spoke to his fleet. "The humans humiliated our forces," he said, his voice cold with anger. "Today we will show them and the galaxy why the Zorlaxian Empire has ruled for 1,000 years. No mercy, no survivors." The massive fleet moved into the solar system, heading straight for Earth. They moved in tight formation, shields overlapping, weapons ready. They had learned from their defeat. This time they would not be tricked easily. Admiral Peterson watched from Earth Command as the alien fleet approached. "Begin Operation Ghost," he ordered. Throughout the solar system, hidden ships and stations activated electronic warfare systems. The space around the Zorlaxian fleet filled with false signals, phantom ships, and confusing readings. "What is happening?" the High Commander demanded, as his sensors showed thousands of human ships appearing and disappearing. "They are trying to confuse us," Commander Krazathul said. "Ignore the false readings, press forward." The Zorlaxian fleet pushed on, but more slowly now. They couldn't be sure which signals were real and which were fake. Their formation began to spread out as ships tried to investigate possible threats. That was what Peterson had been waiting for. "Launch the swarm," he ordered. From behind the moons of Saturn came thousands of small drones, but these were not like the stealth drones from the first battle. These were combat drones, each armed with weapons adapted from Zorlaxian technology. They moved with incredible speed, targeting the now separated alien ships. "Defend against the small craft," Krazathul ordered, recognizing the tactic. The Zorlaxian ships turned their weapons on the approaching drones, but this too was part of the human plan. As the Zorlaxians focused on the drones, the real attack began. From hidden bases on Jupiter's moons and from the dark side of Mars, the human fleet emerged. Leading them was the Defender. Captain Miller's ship had been specially designed for this moment. It carried the newest weapons and the strongest shields humanity could build. "All ships, engage targets," Miller ordered. "Remember your training. Remember our fallen." The human fleet hit the Zorlaxian ships hard. The battle was fierce. The Zorlaxians fought well, but they were confused by the tactics the humans used. The Earth ships didn't behave like any military force they had encountered before. They moved in unpredictable patterns. They targeted unexpected systems. They seemed to know exactly where to hit to cause the most damage. On the Zorlaxian command ship, the High Commander watched in growing alarm as his fleet began to take losses. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We outnumber them." Krazathul had no good answer. He had warned that the humans were different, but even he had not expected this level of resistance. The battle raged for hours. Ships on both sides were destroyed. The space around Jupiter became a graveyard of broken vessels. But the humans had one final card to play. Admiral Peterson gave the order. "Deploy the Sunfire." From behind the sun came a ship unlike any other. It was built around a massive weapon, one that used the power of fusion, the same energy that powered the sun itself. The ship moved into position and fired. A beam of pure energy cut through space, hitting the Zorlaxian command ship. The massive vessel's shields failed. The beam cut through the hull like it was paper. The High Commander had only a moment to realize what was happening before his ship exploded, taking him and his entire command staff with it. The remaining Zorlaxian ships were thrown into confusion. Without clear leadership, different captains made different decisions. Some continued to fight. Others tried to retreat. The coordinated attack fell apart. Captain Miller guided the Defender through the chaos, targeting the largest remaining Zorlaxian ships. Her crew worked perfectly together like a well-oiled machine. "This is for New Seattle," she said as they destroyed another enemy vessel. After 6 hours of fighting, it was over. The mighty Zorlaxian fleet was defeated. Most of their ships were destroyed. Those that survived had fled back to Zorlaxian space, carrying news of the impossible defeat. The cost had been high. Humanity had lost many ships and brave soldiers. But Earth was safe. The Zorlaxian threat was over, at least for now. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Alien ships began to arrive in the solar system. Not Zorlaxian warships, but vessels from other species. They came carrying representatives, diplomats seeking contact with the humans who had done the impossible. 1 year after the final battle, Captain Miller stood in the Great Hall of the newly built Unity Station, Earth's first diplomatic outpost in space. Around her were representatives from 20 alien species, many of whom had once been subjects of the Zorlaxian Empire. Ambassador Vreelik, a tall, blue-skinned being, addressed the gathering. For centuries, the Zorlaxians ruled through fear and force. We believed there was no hope for freedom. Then humans showed us that even the mightiest empire can be defeated by those with courage and determination. Miller looked around at the faces of the aliens and her fellow humans. What had started with a tragic attack on Mars had led to something wonderful: Earth's entrance into a wider galactic community. "We never wanted war," she said, when it was her turn to speak. "But we will always defend ourselves and those who cannot defend themselves. That is what it means to be human." As she finished speaking, she thought about all they had lost and all they had gained. The path had been hard, but humanity had not only survived, they had thrived, and they had changed the galaxy forever.